How's it going, Laser Bruises up? I'm Sixkilla, welcome back. The choices that matter. And the sun went up. I actually looked it up. There is 15 arcs. And we're in 13, I believe, so we're very close to the end. Actually. It's been a long road, man. I've been playing this game for over 10 hours. Which for a game that is just shy of $8. Pretty good effort. Pretty good effort. Anyway, let's continue, shall we? Oh yeah, are we going into space? Not me, I'm leaving it to the pros. Well, thank goodness he left. I'm not sure space would survive you. We can discuss this in transit, Dolores cut in. She held 2 radios in her hands and passed one to Crank. You and Gilbert take Chase and Etienne with you in the hatchback. She passed the other to Sharon. You take Vardek and Matron with you. Satine can join me. It'll be easier on her injuries. She's okay though, right? Chase asked, frowning. She's healing quite well. I suspect she'll be able to help once we get to Vostochny. Indeed, Dolores nodded. These are short radio waves, so stay close to each other. Once you get to the rendezvous point, I'll radio where I've set up, and we can scope the launch site. She looked around at each of us and nodded. On your way. Let's get this done before we lose light. She strutted away and Etienne frowned at me. Did she suddenly get poetic since I last saw you? He asked. A lot has happened, I sighed. I'll tell you on the way. Let's roll out. Took us less than half an hour to load up the others and set on our way. As soon as we were well on the road, I tested the radio. How are you doing up there, I asked, watching the fool drive ahead of us. Can you hear me nice and clear? Sharon's voice crackled over the connection. How do I use this thing? Yes, the charging ram reads you. Over. Charging ram, I asked, laughing. We need code names, she insisted. What's your car's code name? Oh my god, definitely the confused hedgehog. Seriously? That's what you can come up with? She asked, laughing. In the background I could hear Vardek scoffing about the worst code name ever. I feel like it's apt, I countered. Well, prickly and not really know where the fuck we're going. After a bit of back and forthing, we turned off the radio to preserve the battery. I was sitting in the back with Etienne, and we swapped stories of China and Russia. I'm glad you're here, I said in the end, watching the sun dip below the horizon. We've lost a few people. It's nice to have friends around. You aren't alone, he said, taking my hand in comfort. We're gonna figure this out. Heads up, Crank called from the front. Looks like you got an issue up ahead. I could see a thick column of smoke rising in the distance. I leaned around the driver's seat and squinted. There was an orange glow somewhere ahead of us. Given the amount of smoke, the fire must be huge. What do you think? I asked quietly. Are you guys seeing this? Vardek called over the radio before Crank could answer. Crank took the radio and responded. Sure do, keep your wits about you. We should go around. Left or right? Right, he answered, almost instantly. I can't be sure, but it looks like there's a billboard to the left. Immediately after he said that, a large burning overpass came into view. As our cars made careful detours off to the side of the road to avoid the burning structure, I tried to see what was written on it. Can anyone make out what it said? Etienne asked. No, Chase mused, still staring out the window. It's tagged with paint, but I can't make out the words. You did better than me. I couldn't see anything, I muttered. Crank picked up the radio again. Stay sharp. If it's a warning, I don't want to run into whoever left it there. Aye aye, Captain, came Vardek's response. Let's speed up the sooner we get there. Agreed, Chase muttered in the front, still looking out the window. The further along the road we got, the more I relaxed. Even Crank, after 20 minutes, seemed to sit back, as if the danger had passed. Etienne was the opposite. The more we drove, the more tense he got. Finally he spoke up. We should turn around. Nothing's happened, Crank said. I think we're safe. I don't know, it just doesn't feel right. Why leave an overpass on fire with a message no one can read? Maybe they lit it during the day, I shrugged. Maybe 2 different people tagged the sign and set it on fire. We can't know. So you want to keep going, he asked me, pleading with his eyes. Really? We have to, I nodded. We have to go to the launch site. Ahead, the road curved, and then dipped out of sight. Crank slowed the car down for the corners while Sharon's car disappeared around the corner. I'm just saying. Didn't you see the sign? Came an unfamiliar voice over the radio. Welcome to the new world, girlie. Get out of the damn car. What do you want? Sharon asked, and I caught on. She turned on the radio to warn us. Crank, stop, I said. Though it was unnecessary, he was already pulling over. Sorry, Etienne, looks like you were right. Thanks for saying so, he muttered, face grave. We're sick of the word lady, the unknown voice came again. We all thought we were going to die when the sun went out, but we got a second chance, see? So you're changing the world, she scoffed, and I groaned. How like Sharon to antagonize the men threatening her. No, the unknown man said. Just our little part of it. This is our new world, and we take what we want. The government can't stop us. Haven't you seen them around lately? Can't say I have. Exactly. So you're on our turf, and I'm going to ask you again. Is there anyone else with you? Just our carload, Sharon lied. We're heading for green pastures too. Maybe we can help each other. Or maybe I can shoot your boyfriend here and take advantage of the minx in the back seat, he seethed. That's what I'll do if you're lying to me. Teacher, our friends are in danger. What do you want to do? Crank asked me, twisting in his seat to see me. Just listen, she's giving us the chance to get some intel on them. We can't just sit here, Chase argued. If we run without a plan, they'll kill us. And probably them too, I pointed out. There's only one guy, he argued. That we know of. He said our new world, Crank pointed out. And that he'd shoot Vardek. He had a gun and he's not alone. Apart from what we know, apart from that, we know next to nothing, I said. We're alone, Sharon shouted after the sound of scuffling. Leave her alone. Comrade, Vardek said in a reasonable tone. We'll leave, we don't want trouble. Shut up, the unknown man barked. If you're alone, then why is my sniper aiming at a car on the other side of the bend? Crank instinctively ducked and put the car in neutral. Make a decision, he yelled at me, hands gripping the wheel. Gun it, we'll ram them and hope to survive. The wheels screeched and as Crank revved the engine, peeling us off around the corner. I had a split second to take in what was around the corner. A bus across the road and two men with guns standing on top of it, before Crank aimed for the third man standing next to Sharon's car. He dove out of the way at the last second. Crank slammed the brakes, grabbed his own gun and stepped out of the car. When I heard a young boy screaming, I scrambled out of the car myself, yelling at Crank to stop. Wheels stood frozen, Sharon now out of the car as well. The unknown man from the radio, blood dripping from his nose, comforted the young boy in Russian. The boy couldn't have been more than 10. A woman quickly ran up and took the young boy, leading him back behind the bus. Crank raised his gun, again, but I shook my head at him. The man removed his jumper and used it to stem the bleeding from what was obviously a broken nose. It must have happened when he dived away. We'll let you pass, but only if you do it in peace, he said, holding up a hand in surrender. We don't want any trouble here. The sniper was a lie, wasn't it? I asked. The man shut his eyes. Yes, it's just a man with binoculars. Truthfully, these are all the guns we own. It was all a scare tactic. I should throttle you. You don't know what it's been like, outsider, he yelled, tears in his eyes. You don't know what we've lost. We've all lost something. And more people, Sharon said diplomatically, stepping forward. We don't have to make it worse for each other. What's going on here, I asked, gesturing all around us. Was the whole world broken? There are gangs up and down these roads, he said, sitting on the steps of the bus. They take what they want. Women, men, guns, food, medicine, anything that isn't tied down. There isn't enough law enforcement to keep them in check anymore. So you become one of them, I caught on nodding. Only more as a front. That's right. We scare off everyone who comes this way to protect our families. I'm confused. What if someone with more guns comes along? That's the point, Moti, I answered for him. No one knows how many guns, or people, they have. Just like we didn't. Humans fear the unknown. Something we fear every day, the man nodded. We do what we can, though. He sighed before nodding at us. Welcome to the new world, where you can't trust anyone. He indicated for a teenager to come closer and hand the keys on his belt over to her. This is Anya. She'll move the bus from the other side of the barricade for you. Go on your way, don't look back, for all our sakes. Moving through the makeshift camp was strange. There had to be a dozen families all hunkered down, mostly elderly, women and children. They looked at our convoy with fear. Can we help these people, teacher? I thought you were all about killing the enemy now, Moti, I replied. I don't really want anyone to die, teacher. I just say those things. I want to be tough, like in the movies. From now on, just say what you mean. The drive to the radio tower that Dolores had made our meeting point was relatively uneventful. Though we hadn't really been on the road for that long, I was ready to take a nap. While Dolores wasn't at the radio tower, we found the message she'd left for us, instructing us where to go. We made our way towards a little farm, not far from the launch site. Dolores walked out of the small barn to meet us. In the distance, what used to be the farmhouse was now a black shell, burned down. Where's the jet? I asked, looking around. I couldn't see it. Another barn down the hill, she nodded. This one isn't big enough for it. Satine's there refueling and getting it ready to go and collect our astronaut friends. Fair enough. Did you have any trouble? No, she sniffed, indignant. I'm a professional. How about you? Run into any danger on the road? No, I lied, thinking that the group we met was best left alone. It was a quick run, mostly. Good, she retorted, not believing me for a second. There isn't much comfort here. We'll try to get some rest. After dawn, we'll try to move into the launch site. And I need everyone sharp. The majority of the group grumbled. Some talked about needing a break and others wished for a bed. Chase decided to go and visit Satine instead of Etienne wandered away from the barn towards an old rundown tractor. What are we doing, Dolores? I asked. We can't really get anyone to space, can we? We can try. Besides, who else is going to do it? She went back into the barn, leaving me alone. Teacher, you seem sad. Is everything okay? Moti, it's been a long year, I muttered. A long, strange year. I have a feeling it's all going to end sooner than we think. We can't control time, teacher. It's not a variable, but a constant. No, time isn't a constant. E equals mc squared, remember? Only the speed of light is constant. Of course, Moti, thanks for the logic. I tried to sleep, and even though I was dead tired, I couldn't stop the thoughts in my head from keeping me awake. Eventually, just before dawn, I got up and snuck out of the barn as quietly as I could. Just because I wasn't sleeping didn't mean the others shouldn't. Soon I found out I wasn't the only one awake. I saw Satine and Chase walking back up the hill. They were laughing and joking together until suddenly Satine pulled Chase into a deep kiss. Surprised, I hid. An Aetherite and a child of Gaia, not fighting but getting along fantastically? Soon they disappeared into the barn, so I turned around and went the other way. As I was walking between the tall grass, I thought about them. Did something as pure as love come out of this whole mess? If two people from two factions which clearly loathed each other could fall in love, maybe it wasn't all for nothing. All the death, the pain, the trouble, it was beginning to feel like it was all a cruel test. Are you thinking about Miss Sharon or Mr. Etienne, teacher? What are you talking about, Moti? Surely if Mr. Chase and Miss Satine can get together, you can find someone too. I'm not sure if that's an insult or a compliment, I muttered, keeping my voice low. Don't you have feelings for Mr. Etienne or Miss Sharon, teacher? I don't know, Moti, maybe. I see. You should really find out, teacher, before someone else gets there first. Kind of more important things to worry about. Sure, that was my main concern. I looped back around and headed back toward the barn, knowing Dolores would be awake by now, and able to walk me through the plan again. The Sixkilla Cosmodrome was meant to be a brand new launch site, so new that it wasn't yet fully tested. With any luck, there wouldn't be any hitches in the shuttle launch, but I was hardly an expert on the subject. I shut my eyes, thinking through the possibilities. I'd be more comfortable when the astronauts arrived. Dolores and Satine were leaving after the debrief to collect them. As I neared the barn, I realized once again that I wasn't the only one not sleeping. Etienne was in the tractor, reclining in the driver's seat looking at the stars. Sharon had a lamp on and had buried herself in the engine of one of the cars. Fancy coming across these two? Shut up, Moti. Go to Sharon. Turning my back on the tractor, I made my way towards Sharon. She looked up as I drew close. Hey, she called. Care to hold this light for me? The engine was running a little rough yesterday and I wanted to get it tuned. Sure. I took the lamp and held it at an angle that she wanted, watching her work quickly and gracefully. You're very good at this, I remarked, mesmerized. She smiled. Vardek used to say that I read machines like he does code. It's a simple science to me, you know? Sure, I guess. I shuffled my feet, waiting. How were you and Vardek? You forgiven him yet? There's nothing to forgive, she muttered, standing straight and wiping her face with a rag. I left him. It was because he was in jail, sure, but it was still my decision. He's out of jail now, I said, watching her face carefully. Her lips pulled at the corner. True enough, but only because we broke him out. I couldn't see myself getting back with him, though I still care for him. I see, I mused, garnering me a look from her. Slowly she went back to her work. Any reason for all these questions, she asked, careful not to look me in the eye. Call it curiosity about my friend, I shrugged. Friend? More than a friend, maybe? We're gonna get it on with Sharon? She smiled, pausing in her work to look at me. Maybe I'd like that. A warm glow started in my belly. You think we can pull this off? She continued, looking around the pink light, starting to filter over the horizon, sending astronauts to space. I'd believe anything at Dolores, I nodded. What I'm questioning is why she trusted me with so much. Miss Montague has great faith in you, teacher. Even from the beginning. It's in her notes. I looked down at my little emoticon, frowning. You've read her notes, I asked? When? A while back. I was curious. Sharon laughed and I cracked a smile too. That was Moti, always the curious one. Sharon and I chatted for a while about nothing, just enjoying each other's company for the time. When the sun was finally in the sky, Dolores walked out of the barn and motioned me over. I gotta go, I murmured to Sharon. Do great things, she waved goodbye. Teacher? You're terrible at flirting. Why don't you try it next time, smarty pants? Teacher, I don't wear pants. Your observational skills also suck. None of us have cameras, you know. Dolores led me up to the loft, where she'd set up a table with blueprints of the Vostochny launch site scattered across. She pointed to the blueprints of the central building. This is where they assemble the prep shuttles for launch, she explained. When it's ready, it slides out along this track, to the edge of this dam-like structure, which sends the burn of the launch in a safe direction. Excuse me. I'm with you so far, I nodded. These buildings are all spread out. Given our numbers, we'll need every car we can find. And we can only occupy the essential buildings, she continued, motioning to several more structures on the other side of the fire dam. We have the element of surprise here, and the buildings aren't really guarded, so we should be able to take control of the facility easily. Once we do that, we'll have to barricade every entrance and prepare against attacks. I'm sorry, what? I asked, stepping back. You think we'll be under attack? I'm not ruling anything out. She folded her arms and stared out a nearby window. The Russian government may be in shambles, but it doesn't mean that they'll leave us alone. Plus, if the company finds out we're here, they'll come for us. We're all in the complications matrix after all. There's the gangs and looters too, I groaned, suddenly realizing how right she was. Let's hope they aren't already here. That's why I want Crank on point, she nodded. He's clever, and when it comes to a fight, so use him and be careful. I don't want to bring astronauts back to a war zone. Satina has experience in guerrilla warfare, I mused, rubbing my chin. We could use her. Can you fly the jet without her? Yes, but it's always easier with a co-pilot, of course. She visibly weighed up the pros and cons in her own head before turning to me. It's your call. If you want her, I'll take Matron. Take Matron. I'd feel better going into a big site like this with some fighters. Dolores nodded. As you wish. While I'm away, I doubt I'll be able to contact you. You're in charge, you understand? I'd rather it be a group effort, I said, feeling the pressure. If we can all agree, it's so much easier. It's not always a reality, Dolores cautioned. This has to be done. We won't get a second chance. I nodded, rubbing my forehead. I was getting a headache. Downstairs, we laid out the blueprints for everyone else, telling them the same thing Dolores had told me about the layout. How exactly will we prepare the shuttle? Chase grinned apologetically, looking around. I mean, rocket science is basically the one discipline of engineering that I'm not qualified in. I shook my head and put a hand up to stop him. We're not. That's for the people Dolores is bringing. We just need to secure the area, make sure everything has power, and that it's not been looted to death, alright? Mr. Chase, if we can get you the engineering schematics of Vostochny, can you follow them? I can try. Simple stuff like power, linking up machinery, I can handle that. What about security, I asked. Knowing the Russians, I won't be surprised if there are turrets we can use. I can definitely look into it, he agreed. I'll start working on acquiring that information then. Shouldn't take too long. Cocky, Vardic noted. Confident. Enough, I laughed. Does everyone understand their roles? Good, load up. I want to settle in Vostochny Cosmodrome by nightfall. Everyone dispersed and I grabbed Dolores' hand before she pulled away. Be careful, Dolores. We need you. She raised an eyebrow. I thought I was just the purse. You're part of the team, just be careful. Dolores blushed, something I'd never seen before. I can look after myself, you know, she said stiffly, snatching back her hand and strutting away. Once again, I was in the car with Crank. This time in the passenger seat, I twitched. My eyes darted around, anxious about getting jumped by gangs or otherwise. Will you calm down? Chase grumbled in the back seat. You're making me nervous. Teacher, everything will be okay. You can trust me. I know I can, Moti, but you can't possibly know that. Of course I can. Professor Soul told me that one day I'd do many things. He gave me that gift. I see now. I frowned, turned to look at Etienne. At the mention of his father, the park warden leaned forward to listen. Moti, Soul told you this? When? When you left me behind, teacher. You forgot me for a weekend. You did? Etienne asked. It's out of character for me to leave Moti anywhere. It was right after the company gave me Moti, I nodded. I wasn't used to having something on my wrist back then. Moti, what happened that weekend? Professor Sol gave me a gift. He made it possible for me to learn. He said that maybe one day I'd be my own person. Why haven't you told me this before, Moti? I'm sorry, teacher, you never asked. I groaned, thumping my head against the dash in front of me. Crank stifled a chuckle. Alright, Moti, I said as calmly as I could. Is there anything else you haven't been telling me? That would be telling, teacher. I have secrets too, you know. That's not how personal assistance is meant to work, especially an electronic one, Etienne muttered, looking a little green. You can sort out your love life later, Craig interrupted. We're nearly there, keep sharp. I called over the radio to the other car to let them know. I felt myself tensing up as we drove down the winding road. The Stochny Cosmodrome was surrounded by forest, and the road leading up to it was long and unusually wide. I imagined it was for trucks carrying rocket parts. I hoped everything in the launch site was still working. This part of the road would be a good place for an ambush, Satine called over the radio. That's where I'd set up. Take it easy, I cautioned. No heroics this time. Copy that, Crank muttered. He turned the corner and Vostochny came into sight. And nothing else. The gates were open and no one was on the road or the compound. Trap, Etienne asked, or abandoned? I'm going with abandoned, but let's not be hasty. We progressed slowly, taking our convoy of 2 cars through the long road surrounded by shiny new buildings. The further along we got, the more I realized the second option that Chase supplied was correct. It was abandoned. Why would everyone just leave? Sharon called over the radio. I picked up to reply. I'm guessing the government had better things to do, more important sites to secure, I murmured. Who would think to use a Cosmodrome apart from us? True. Crank took us right down to the launch building and drove the car straight in and up the tower to the towering shuttle. Whoa, I murmured, looking out the window. People forget how large they are, Chase nodded, eyes glazing over. I'm surprised there's one here already assembled. It's good for us, less time spent tinkering. They must have been planning a launch when this place was left behind. We parked alongside the giant beast, and I called everyone together to divide into teams. Chase, I want you and Crank to go to the furthermost buildings, gather anything you think we might need, turn on any equipment that we can use remotely. I nodded to Crank as he picked up his rifle. We want to keep as tight as possible. Satine, Sharon, you two start with the barricades. Get us a perimeter and make it secure. Etienne, go with them and take a handgun. You know how to use one. What about me? Vardak asked, narrowing his eyes at Sharon and Etienne as they headed away. You're here with me, I explained. There's plenty of computers around here and I don't know how to work them. I can help too, teacher. That's right, Moti. And I'll set up camp, move the cars around a bit, pull out the blankets and tents. Vardak moved off toward the banks of computers on the second level, and I went to the cars to get started. Teacher, have you decided who you love the most? You, Moti. I love you the most. Oh, thank you, teacher. But I'm not interested in sexual relations. I'm not an organic being. Moti, you know that's not what I meant, I said, smiling. We worked over the day and got as much done as we could. Etienne came back for an axe and started chopping down smaller trees to use as barricades, and Chase routinely brought back equipment from the outer buildings. I tried to keep tabs on everyone. Crank found a quad bike, which I found delightfully easy to use, so I took that around to make sure everyone was safe. When Sharon found a second one, we had her use it to drag the cut down trees. This kept on for a couple of days. Eventually we found some movable chain link fence that Satine used to prop up barricades. The second jet from China landed the same day. Chase finished scavenging for electronics and began doing what he could at the launch building. Etienne ran over to meet the jet with me, but his face fell when only Wong stepped out before it took off again. I thought you were bringing more of the Etherites with you, he asked. Greeting, Wong. That was the plan, but there was another attack, he admitted, shaking my hand. The pilot and I barely got off the ground. Santiago's group, I asked dryly. The Victorious, yes. I've lost a few more friends again, yet here I stand. I consoled Wong as best I could, but he was just interested in getting to work. I sent him with Etienne to help get reinforcements. The next day, Dolores touched down with the Russian astronauts. All 3 of them. None of them spoke English, and I turned to Dolores. I was expecting more, I said honestly. She nodded. One of us will have to go with them, someone qualified. Alright, I'll go. I better look amazing in a spacesuit. Dolores rolled her eyes. Not you. I doubt you passed the fitness test, she said. I was more thinking Chase Price. He's an engineer, young, fit. He'd be used to them. Are you going to tell him or shall I asked, looking up to where he was on the catwalk, looking over the edge at the astronauts, checking their progress. I will. What's new here? Nothing, honestly. I indicated that she should follow me, and I took her over to where we'd set up camp. There was no one here when we arrived. The shuttle was already there, and I already have a team building our defense, in case anyone tries to attack us. I assumed the team was useful for that, Dolores nodded. All things went smoothly on our side, so you made the right choice in sending Matron with me instead. Turns out she's a pilot as well, though not as experienced. I'm glad, I was worried. We expected you sooner. So no casualties, Dolores nodded. Good. Not quite, I shook my head. Wong arrived alone. He was attacked by the Victorious in China, and lost some of the Aetherites. Minimal then, Dolores sighed. How much time do we have until launch? Chase and Vardek have been working on it, but neither of them have the right qualifications. We'll have to ask our new friends that. Good luck, I still know what their names are, she murmured, walking away. I watched the Russians approach Vardek and strike up a conversation. At least he and Sharon could speak Russian. Asked Moti to translate. I walked over and smiled to the Russians, holding out my hand. Moti, would you please welcome our Russian friends and introduce us? Yes, teacher. Moti and the Russians conversed, and Vardek looked at me with slitted eyes. I could have helped you out, you know, he grumbled, picking up his phone and walking away. Teacher, they said that you can call them by their American nicknames. The large one is Scoot, the very tall one is Bean, and the last one is Noodle. How'd they get those names? From Americans, teacher. They don't really know what they mean. Well, let them know that they're welcome here, and let me or Sharon know if they need anything. Moti garbled in Russian, and the three nodded, looking around some more. When Moti was finished, they spoke again. They said they're excited to use the new facilities. They should have a report for you by tomorrow morning. I nodded and thanked the Russians, hoping they read my body language and understood. When I found Dolores cooking on a camp stove, I told her what I'd learnt. Good, she nodded, chewing a piece of beef jerky. The sooner we can get off the ground, the better. We're sitting targets here. I can no longer access the company's databanks, Miss Montague. I cannot warn against an attack anymore. You asked Moti to do that? I asked, frowning. I mentioned it might be a good idea, she nodded. Good idea, better cautious than dead. I'm not going to be blindsided, Dolores said in agreement. I should know better than anyone what their methods are. That's true. You really think they'd come after us? It was being considered, teacher. Wong tapped me on the shoulder, smiling. Welcome back, Dolores. Nice to see you cooking again. Listen, when can I get my hands in some high-grade chemicals, he asked cheerily. Why do you want chemicals? Explosives, he laughed. I just thought of it then. There's plenty of useful explosives you can make with common chemicals. Chase, I yelled, getting his attention and waving him over. He started descending the ladder, and I turned back to Wong. Chase will show you where they are, but don't use anything before checking with the astronauts. If we make bombs out of the stuff we need, we're back to where we started. Take my bike. He nodded, heading over to meet Chase. Dolores raised an eyebrow at me. You really think that's a good idea, she asked, folding her arms. Can't be worse than letting Crank have a rocket launcher, I shrugged. Wong's trained in that stuff at least. So is Gilbert, Dolores retorted. He was in the army before I found him. Figures. I looked over at the astronauts as they do their work. I still couldn't believe how much our fate was dependent on what we might see on a video recording that had crashed on the surface of the moon. I hoped that whatever was on it could help our scientists come up with a real solution to our disappearing sun problem. Teacher, what happens if we can't launch before the next incident, and we can't get the video recording? We don't talk about that, Moti. That evening we gathered around the generator for dinner. There was still there was a mess hall in one of the buildings. I preferred to keep everyone close, so we'd set up lights, beds and heaters around the cars. Everyone was glad that Dolores had cooked instead of me. I wasn't bad, but Dolores was an excellent cook. It was good for morale. Does this feel like the calm before the storm to anyone else? Matron asked, looking around. We're all here now and working towards the same goal, even the children of Gaia and the Aetherites, who usually hate each other. There's a black sheep in every group, Satine sneered from where she was, sitting close to Chase. I'm not as polarizing as others. Well, we have more in common than we thought, Wong interrupted, indicating to Etienne, who nodded. While we were in China, we discovered something from my father's diary, he said, pulling it out and flipping to the right page. This page, Etienne said, holding his father's diary up like a children's picture book, is about the other plane of connection. He pointed to the one circle, physical plane. He pointed to the other circle, non-physical plane. He pointed to the square, the link. What does that have to do with the children of Gaia and the Aetherites, I asked. Chase and Wong started talking at the same time, and I held up my hand to stop them. Apparently the competitiveness was still there. Do I have to separate you two children? We've been trying to decipher this particular symbol forever. He glanced at Etienne. Somehow your father did what none of us could. Your father's incredible. A pained look crossed Etienne's face. He gave a small nod, but he didn't say anything. Chase went over to Etienne's scroll and touched the square in the middle. If this is the link, the connection, then this is what we're all searching for. He paused. Who? That's who we're searching for. Who? The link between two planes is a person? Chase nodded. The worthy sacrifice. 2 planes, I repeated, the cogs in my head turning, memories flashing in my mind. Back in Antalya, Moti had briefly mentioned the existence of a non-physical plane, a place which had the city soul reside in it, along with all other souls, including the stars. I'd forgotten all about that. Was this what Moti had meant? The physical plane and the non-physical plane? In a drawing inside Professor Sol's diary? It just occurred to me, given the symbol is in the Children of Gaia's sacred text, people must have known about this whole other plane for a long time. Since the 14th century, Wong said, with a faraway look on his face, as if in deep thought. Which I know from history, he continued. Our history. Aetherites. Aetherites? What did Wong mean? Did the symbol have something to do with the Aetherites too? The thing is, said Wong, we've known for a long time about the existence of ether, and have been trying to understand it ever since. But that symbol, and the way it was placed in Professor Sol's diary, I think I know why our research was stuck for so long. Really, I said? Go on. He nodded, but it was obvious that he struggled to share the secrets he'd been taught to hold so close. We always assumed that ether was an invisible physical substance, but seeing that symbol and hearing Sol's interpretation of it, we started to think that ether isn't in this dimension at all. I struggled to understand what he was saying. Are you saying the ether is in the non-physical plane? As in, you've been measuring something from an entirely different dimension? Exactly, he said. So the people we thought of as being especially resonant with ether were actually just expressing a stronger connection to this other dimension. So if someone has a connection to this other plane, that means they're in 2 places at once all the time, right? Wong laughed. I suppose so, yes. The implications for study are massive, Satine breathed, staring wide-eyed. Alright, we are out of time for this one, but we are getting very close to the end here. Once we launch the rockets, I think it's all going to be over. I guess we'll find out. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you in the next one.